are you gonna do a closing prayer?
I can do that.
I can read an opening.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are we ready to go?
Yep.
Is this on?
Yep.
Am I set? Awesome, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, how's that? Can everybody hear me? Can I shift? All right, I think you are all here for our cottage meeting to talk about our sanctuary refresh, so thank you for taking the time to sit with us, learn a little bit more. I'll start us with an opening prayer, and then we'll go through the slides together. Good morning, God. Thank you for the gift of this day, a new beginning, a fresh breath, and the quiet promise that even the smallest moments matter. Help us to recognize the blessings tucked into each hour, the laughter shared, the kindness extended, the strength found in showing up. As we look back and look ahead, remind us that a lot can happen. Growth, healing, transformation, each unfold not all at once, but in the faithful rhythms of daily steps. Thank you for being present in every season, guiding us with patience and purpose. Amen. So, I love this slide. Look at it. Should look familiar to you, right? And in a few more slides, you'll see something that's new and different. So on to the first slide, if you wouldn't mind advancing. We just wanted to remind folks, in case you weren't here for the quarterly dialogue, of the members of our Sanctuary Refresh team who have been hard at work, as Pastor Hoffman mentioned, over the last year or so. It was July of last year that we presented our plans to move forward, and then at the quarterly dialogue shared an update with you. So on the Sanctuary Refresh team, Margie Gall, Chris Gates, Sandy Mazarski, myself, Julie Owen, Bob Stoltz, Tony Thompson, and Pastor Amy. You are welcome to reach out to any or all of us if you have questions or want to talk things through. We're happy to share the process that we've been through and how we arrived where we are today. Also want to just set some, expectations about the purpose for today's meeting. The purpose is to see the plans that we've developed as a team and to help us discern if we have been successful in meeting the goals and objectives that were put forth to us. Want to emphasize that today is not about authorizing expenses or approving a plan. That is going to come at a later date, pending what happens or what the feedback is from these cottage meetings. Next slide. Again, a refresher for those of you who didn't hear this at the quarterly dialogue. We had several goals and objectives to achieve with the team. First off being making sure we are aligning with our vision to build a lasting community that follows Jesus. In that opening prayer, I mentioned that transformation and change happens slowly. When I think back a year or two to how this space was used and who was welcomed into our space, it's amazing to think how differently this space is utilized today. So we want to continue that vision to build lasting community that follows Jesus. In addition, this ties into one of our older visions, but still very much a part of who we are as a community, to make sure that we're welcoming people, that when people show up on our doorstep, maybe for the first time, that they automatically feel welcome, that we aren't making any special accommodations. Those have already been made for people who are joining us in worship or as just part of the general community. So I mentioned accessibility. That is something that we wanted to factor in for those that have mobility needs, making sure that we can do our best to accommodate those needs. We also know that as a BLC family, it's important for us to maintain some of what makes this space special. and that is that the sacred space, we mentioned the stained glass windows and the work that we committed to doing to keep those and make sure they were well cared for. So we want to preserve the beauty in the space around us. And then we know that we needed to replace the carpeting. In fact, that's where this all started. I mentioned the many staples, the ripples in the floors. Knowing that we needed to replace the carpeting gave us the ability to kind of think creatively about how we could then use the space. The next slide, please. We also know that we wanted to have flexible space, that we wanted areas that we could feel smaller and more community together, that we could address some of the tight spots, particularly during funerals, making sure that there was space, that there, around the altar we wanted to create more space, and seating. Some of the seating we wanted to address as well. And then again, just mentioning the stained glass windows work has been completed. And then our live stream equipment, what started off as a temporary folding table has now turned into something that meshes with the rest of our space. So those... There's still a lot of cables. Still a lot of cables, but they're better hidden than they were before. So, drum roll please. Next slide. All right. Hopefully you can see that pretty well. This is your first glimpse of the end product of about 8 months of conversation and 4 or 5 meetings with our architect, Jennifer, with Architectura. So, maybe I'm going to pause as you soak this all in to see the drawing.
It might be hard to see.
It is hard to see, Doris, sorry. All right.
So, can I just, is
of
it all right
course.
if I explain
Yeah.
a couple things?
Yep.
I'm gonna just, thank you. I'm gonna just say a couple things, and maybe that will help you see what you're looking at a little bit. I tried to blow these up when I made the slides as big as possible. Over there, we still have space for bell tables, but the space, the way they're oriented is angled facing the congregation. So that's what you see on the left side. There's still seating over there, chairs, as we currently have. On the right side, you see the organ as it is. The plan that the architect that we've been working with, we've come up with, includes a slight reorienting of the platform here so that we can also extend the second row and the third row for the choir, so that there's a first row for the choir, a second row for the choir, and the third row of the choir, all on different levels. So that's part of the plan that we have, and we've got plenty of seating over there for that. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So that's what you see over here. A slight recreation of this, and then extending the rows so that there is a floor row, a first row, and then a second row with a railing and ways to access that. What you see here in the middle is an orientation for either the baptismal font in the center, or the larger rectangle is if we were to have a casket. That's one of the things we talked about, is when we have funerals with caskets, it's very tight up here. So as we did the planning, we took that into account. How do we make space for that so that, for instance, that can happen and we don't have to be moving the casket throughout a funeral in order to make space for people if they're coming forward for communion. You'll see that what this plan shows is all individual seating, and it's slightly curved to mimic the curve in the back of the sanctuary. So the seating is rounded in rows, and so it completes a circle with the front of the sanctuary. So that's just one way we tried to address and create a sense of welcome. With slightly curved rows, you would be able to see people across the sanctuary, not just those people that might be sitting next to you, but glancing across the sanctuary, if you're at the end of the row, you could see other people in the sanctuary sitting there also, so that there's a sense of connection and community. And with flexible seating, it allows us to reorient or to pull some seats closer to the altar area if we have a smaller service, so that it has a more intimate feel. But for larger services, it allows us to add a little extra seating in back. Perhaps if the bells aren't playing, it allows us to keep adding additional seats here, so we can create more seating within the sanctuary for those times when we need it, in addition to still having that narthex space available. And then, in order to accommodate a little bit more roominess on the altar area, and in order to provide accessibility and handrails, our architect suggested squaring off the altar, so that rather than the altar area being two kind of rounded steps, it would be one flat front, and then so this would be the highest level currently, and then a step down, that would be the lower level current, and then this would be the floor level. So rather than it being rounded, our architect suggested squaring that off, and then there's access here, step, 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 with handrails on each side, and then a straight front altar. So there could still be altar communion, but it would have a straight front. And we talked about, if we were to move forward with this is again just a proposal to meet our goals and objectives, that the current plaques on the communion rail could still be added to a different communion rail. We could still utilize those even if we made it straight across. The other thing, just so you can see what we've done, in order to address accessibility to the altar area, we had a lot of discussion as a team about how do we help all people be participants in our worship life, however they want to do it. So if they are using an assistive device, if they need a wheelchair, what are ways that help people to access the entire sanctuary? So we talked about having a ramp that would get you from the upper level to the floor level. A ramp that allows you to do that would have to be 16 feet long. In order to just make those levels and to be ADA compliant. So we talked about, could you do a ramp, kind of a two-stage ramp? You could, and so that was one option we looked at. Another option we looked at, and what is included in this drawing, is a simple lift that can raise someone from the ground level up to the second step level. So it would be another way for someone to have access to the whole sanctuary. I want to say one other thing about that. No, I'm going to not say anything else. I've already been talking a lot. So does that help you at least? I mean, it's hard to see. And we will just know, this is not your only opportunity to provide input. After this week, we're going to have a bulletin board. You're going to be able to see drawings and things more clearly, so you can ask more questions as you go along. So you don't have to think, if you leave here today and think, oh, I didn't ask about this or that or something, you have lots of opportunities. You can keep reaching out to us and helping yourself to understand. Okay? Yeah, Mike.
The chairs appear to be movable. Is that true?
Yes, the chairs are individual seating, and they are movable so that there can be more flexibility. Like I said, for smaller services, you could potentially pull some of the rows a little bit closer to really make a sense of intimate seating. For larger services, you could do them in a more traditional fashion, but also fill in other spaces. The plan allows for a little bit of additional seating behind what is currently the last row, not for an every week, but when we need more seating, that we've got an accessible way to include that in the sanctuary. Because what we know is on Easter and Christmas, it is always a better worship experience to be in the sanctuary than to be in the narthex. And so we want to keep thinking about how do we accommodate that.
Do the chairs connect to each other side by side, or are they each individual?
Sherry is asking, do the chairs connect to each other side by side, or are they individual? They are individual, and they have, I'm not exactly sure how, I can't answer that question. We have seen some examples of chairs, but it's been a while, and so I don't remember. I think, do you remember, Bob? Or does anyone else remember?
I think either,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, some do, some don't. And some, what we've talked about is if we were to move in this direction, some of the chairs would just be chairs, like this that don't have arms. And some chairs would have arms because there's people who both need arms to help them get up and down and other people who don't. So, the space as a whole would be more conducive to greater numbers of people.
Will the chairs be padded in here?
The question is, from Phyllis, will the chairs be padded? We have looked, yes.
I'm not saying it just to sit down, but that's going to soak up a lot of time.
Yes, so the question is, will the chairs be padded? Because padded chairs soak up sound. So the chairs that we have originally looked at can come without any padding. They can come with seating padding but not back padding, or back padding and not seating padding, or completely padded, front padded, back padded. I mean, there's a variety of configurations, and we are thinking a lot about how do we, with whatever we propose, and you have a chance to think about, what we don't want to do is greatly change the natural acoustic of this space, because it's a space that's very conducive to congregational singing, and we don't want that to change. So when you sing in this sanctuary, the sound of all of the voices is enhanced. And we don't want to lose that. And so we're really considering how do we configure seating. The reality is also when the sanctuary is full, as it was this morning, people absorb sound as well. And so there's already a natural kind of sound absorption that happens when we worship on Sunday mornings just because there's people here. The question is, how much difference would that be from having pads on seats?
Also, where would the carpeting be?
Can I just
Yep.
do a quick timeout?
Yeah.
Because your questions are great. I just want to get through the rest of the slides. We have another photo that shows you a different perspective.
Yeah, thank you.
And then there is actually a sample of potentially what the seating could look like. So I want to give everybody a chance to look at that. And then we'll pass the microphone so that everybody can hear the questions, because we have folks participating virtually as well. So these are great questions. I just want to make sure everybody hears them. So thank you. So if we can go to the next slide again, go ahead. Another timeout.
How many can be seated in this chancel as it sits right now?
I'll answer that after she's through the slides.
Okay, and I want to know how many are shown to be seated with that new configuration.
Yeah, I've got all the numbers before and after.
I'd like to know.
All right. In case live stream people didn't hear that, Wayne had questions about the seating, the existing seating capacity in the chancel area, and then what the proposed seating would be. Again, I know this picture may be a little bit difficult for you to see, but this is more of a bird's eye view. We're looking from above at what that layout would look like. And then the next slide shows a sample of the seating. Great. So again, I think Pastor Amy mentioned every possible type of seating there is. There's storage below, there's storage behind, there's a wood seat with padded back, there's a padded seat with a wood back. There are so many different configurations, and honestly, we didn't get into that level of detail. We're looking at the overall plan to see if people are supportive of the general idea and whether or not we've met the goals and objectives. As we capture those questions, it helps us to know what is important to people, so please don't hesitate to ask those questions. We're going to capture those and make sure that we're listening to that feedback. And then the final slide is just a reminder of the purpose of the meeting, to see the plans that have been developed and how successfully those plans help us to meet our goals and objectives. So now I will reopen the floor. Please do not be shy about sharing your thoughts. And if you can just wait for the microphone so we can make sure folks online hear us.
Yeah, just let us know who you are too, and then just repeat your second question.
I'm Phyllis Stock. My second question was, where would the carpeting be? Would there be carpeting under all of the chairs?
In this configuration, yes, although I think so there's a reason Chris has joined our sanctuary refresh team. As Pastor Amy mentioned, we know how important music is, and the sound and the acoustics are critically important. So Chris has been our sounding board and helping us to understand and ask the questions so that we know how each configuration impacts the sound. I don't know that we've reached a final verdict on where or on the carpeting itself. Is that fair?
Yep, thank you.
I'm Bob Stock. I want to share an experience. In my hometown, there's two churches. On one side is the Lutheran church, and if you go into the Lutheran church, it has very high ceilings, it has wooden pews and wooden floor, and singing in there is glorious. And the reason it's glorious is because of the reverberation. We all love that sound. In fact, if you buy any recording, those recording studios have added reverberation to the live performance. That's what we like. Across the street is the architect did a great job aesthetically, and it looks beautiful, but it's fully carpeted. There's still pews, but they're covered with foam and fabric, and singing in there is like singing into a sock. It absorbs so much of the sound that you don't hear any of that reverberation. Obviously, that's our concern. We know the aesthetics and the comfort is going to be covered, and I'm hearing that the aesthetics or the acoustics are at least being considered. Whatever you change, it's going to change the acoustics in here.
Thank you, Mike Joyce. I just wanted to put in a plug that any changes that are made, as long as we're going to tear things up, we ought to put in at least the conduit to allow for more cabling and other live stream related signals.
Thank you.
Wayne had a question earlier about numbers. You want to take that one? Can you repeat the question?
A comment on the acoustics. I know some things, and I've reached out to a consultant who I haven't heard back from yet, but it's true. Everyone agrees that the acoustics in this space for singing and for the organ and the piano are really good, and we don't want to do anything to make it not as good. The way I look at it is that it sounds pretty good to me when it's full, as opposed to when it's empty. When it's empty, you're going to get a lot more reverb of the sound and things like that. And to have these spaces with some cushions, probably wooden back chairs, maybe carpeting on the floor, wouldn't be any more absorbing than it is now when it's full of people. So I don't think we could do anything to make it less of a lively acoustic space compared to when it's filled with people. But when it's empty, it might sound more like it's half full of people. That's sort of what my gut tells me, but we're going to look for some qualified, professional sort of advice.
Can you talk about seating capacity?
Yeah. Wayne asked about what's our seating capacity, what is it now, what would it be? Just to do a very brief look back, we joined my family in 1989. That was 4 or 5 years after we went from being a traditional lengthwise church. It got turned sideways, and I don't know what the capacity was before that, probably 120 or something, but what they did when they turned the sanctuary is their goal was to squeeze in as many people as possible. That's what they had to do. And you can see we have a lot of rows, we have a lot of pews. When they did that, they created seating for 224 people. And that's these two center sections. There was 5 rows of pews there that we've taken out. There was some movable chairs for 20 people over by the wall. And this place really, really filled up. And even then, we still had people in folding chairs in the hallways and in the entryway. I mean, it was a very full church at that point. Now, so that was 224. I guess a few years back, we took out these pews. First we took out a row, then we decided, well, why don't we take them on out and free up this space for other stuff. That took away 34 seats. We don't use the 20 over here, so that's about 50 less. So our seating capacity right now is 180. And that includes these 2 center sections. I figured 10 seats over here. And does that include the choir? Yeah, that includes 25 for the choir, but the bell tables would still be here.
Are you saying there were only 50 seats when all the pews were here?
There's 34 in the pews and another 20 in the chairs. So, yeah, 50 seats-ish. So right now, we have a capacity of 180. In these 2 center sections, we have seating for 145. And what the drawing shows with the different style of chairs, that puts 136 in the center section. So that would be down by 9, from 145 to 136. So it'd be like not having one of these longer rows. The other thing about the seating is, when they went to squeeze in as many people as they could. We've got 10 rows of pews, and they're tight. If you looked at the drawing, you would see that it's got 10, but we would plan on usually not having the row behind those posts back there, just to make a better, space for moving around in the back. We've done a lot of thinking about some of the constraints and constrictions in this place. Over in the corner on the choir side, there's some tightness when you have a lot of people. Same thing on this side. Placing a person in a wheelchair can be a problem. People with limited mobility who can't just, scamper around to any pew. The other thing I noticed today, we had 120 people today, and it felt like a full room. I mean, it felt good. There was room, I was looking around, and there was room in between people in the middles of the pews for 30 or 40 more people. The thing is, these pews are tight, they're too tight for even somebody standing up to squeeze by somebody. So we reduce the number of rows by one to leave more space in between. Hopefully enough, we can do testing and measuring for people to get by each other, so the center seats won't be orphaned by somebody who needs to sit on the end. There's a lot of reasons people need to be on the end of a pew. So there's that. So we would give up, Wayne, I guess to answer your question, we wouldn't be giving up a real significant number of places for people to sit. For the big services, we've still got the narthex, and we could put more seats over here. So there's things we could do for Christmas, Easter, when we know it's going to be a big crowd. Oh, in the choir area, what was the question about the choir area? Am I talking your ear off yet?
Choir is fine. In fact, I think right now your population of the choir is about 20. And the question always had been, how many seats would you need? And that it would be 25 easily with the configuration you have right now. So if you change it and square off the ends and so forth, you're going to pick up more seats there for the choir.
That's true. What we're figuring is 25 to 30 we want to have capacity for the choirs. And, Raylan tells us, what you really want for a choir, the best thing is for each row to be, head height above the row behind, or the row in front of it. And, if we're gonna take out all the old carpeting and do other stuff, we're kind of figuring that's not a big thing. It's some carpentry, a little bit of wooden, nailing boards together could make a configuration like that. So we're looking to keep the same kind of capacity, but not have them directly behind each other, and to not have them spilling off into the flat floor when you really want them to be in different positions. Question?
I have several. I'm Jerry Ann Westcott. I just have several thoughts. If the chairs are connected, you can't curve them. You can't curve the chairs in a row if they're connected, if that's what you want. They're probably sturdier if you connect them for people who need the extra oomph to stand up. How many? I think we have 10 pews. I couldn't see clearly on the drawing. Are there 9 pews there in the drawing? So you're thinking of removing 2 pews, 2 rows, 8 instead of 10, just to make that clear. Some of us were here when we added the narthex on. And remember worship in the basement? It was sound-wise, it was terrible. The congregational singing was not the same. The acoustics were awful. What's interesting is the piano, the keyboard that Susie played on in the basement. They actually record each pitch, and that is inserted in the keyboard. They record the pitch, the C, is recorded in a wonderful wood-covered sanctuary with great acoustics. So it was the wrong sound for a room with no wood. And just keep that in mind. you just can't get the acoustics without wood. That was terrible down there.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leanna Cafaro. Just a couple comments that I have to share. Jerry Ann, the church that I actually was a member of when I was a kid had individual chairs that were connected, but they were only connected by the end of the actual seat. So there was an ability to make a slight arc. It wasn't the whole seat was connected. And I know that they would move things around. They could squeeze the pews together or the rows together if they needed to fit more people in, or on a regular Sunday have a little bit more space. So it was a little bit more manual work on a season to season basis because people would have to move the chairs, add, take away, etc. But the shaping of it, they could angle them in an arc, they could have them in straight rows. Again, it's work every single time you change it, but there was some flexibility there, which was nice for different occasions. Yeah. And then the other comment that I have, the property team, Bob, and the number of people who I'm sure came before him have done a great job maintaining for 100 years the carpeting and hardwood and everything underneath it. So I would encourage you to look at options that have ways that you could repair them for another 100-ish years or so.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff Hansen. I know this won't be received positively, but I'm going to ask the question. Did you consider just lowering the front altar area to the floor? You spent a lot of time with elevations and ramps and steps and handles. What happens if it goes to the floor? I know you won't be able to see as well, but has anybody thought about that?
Sorry about that. Your question is great. Thank you. So the question, well, everybody heard the question, and it actually was part of our discussions as a team. We went through several different options, and you hit the nail on the head with the visibility became the challenge. And so we ended up with this. That's not to say it has to be that way, but that's where we landed, that visibility was tough if we kept it at the same level.
We literally did an exercise where I came in and stood on the level, and we marked out what the levels would be and had people sitting in the sanctuary and saying, okay, I can see your head, but only just your head. I mean, we were really playing with what is visible to people. Yeah, so we actually we took that really seriously. It's a good question. One of the things that I know is that in sanctuaries that I have been in where it is all at one level, so the accessibility piece takes place, often what happens is an imperceptible pitch is built into the rest of the sanctuary. I know the church where I was at college, I know this because our choir director would often tell us this. There was a very imperceptible pitch from the beginning, from the front of the building to the back of the building, so that every row was just slightly higher than the row in front of it. You couldn't see it, you couldn't feel it, but it was there so that visibility piece. We don't currently have that, and we haven't talked about reconfiguring the entire first level flooring in order to build that into it. So that's often how that is accomplished in places though where it's all at one level.
Can I ask you to expand why that's important to you? So is it for an accessibility reason? I'm just trying to jot notes to understand thought process. What about that is important?
So I kind of just broke it into three areas. You have to spend time on ramps, on stairs, a whole bunch of extra area use that, we're concerned about the area. The other is if you're moving back the curve of the altar rail to a
Yeah. So, for people that might have not heard that, Jeff was just mentioning that he was just thinking like the team took so much consideration into effect about how to access and ramps and things like that, that would there be ways to keep the level the same so you don't have to address those, but then build in steps or raises for people that are in leadership places to make them more visible to people in the congregation? I think that's a...
When I grew up, we had a separate spot for the sermon, just like we do here, and it was on the floor, and yes, you took steps up to that point. So they were visible, but, you know, it wasn't wheelchair accessible and all that kind of. Does that still have to be there if it's for that one purpose?
Yeah, yeah, good point, very good points.
Judy Lohr, and first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for the work you have put in. I mean, clearly, this is a monumental task, and you've done an excellent job. Secondly is, has a ballpark expense figure been established, or is that yet to come?
Your final thought, yet to come. And we need to discern after hearing all of this feedback. So this may change. So yet to come.
Sandy Joyce, I'm just curious, assuming this was all approved, how long would this take to do? Do you have any idea? And I wasn't quite sure if I understood the choir part. Would you be putting another level there?
The choir wouldn't have, yeah, it would actually. So there would be some seating on the floor level, there would be some seating on the current step level, and then the last row would have a third level. So there would be an added level there. The other question Sandy asked was around timing. We don't know because we don't actually know what we're doing. Once we hear this, once we kind of pull this together into an actual proposal that goes before the congregation, we would have a better sense of what the timing is. Obviously, we would want to plan this in such a way that minimizes disruption to the worship life, because as Jerry Ann said, you know, no one wants to worship in the fellowship hall. Like, we all, that's not a surprise. So, you know, we would think and shape the work so that it minimizes our disruption as much as possible. Depending on how much is done, it may not take long. You know, it may be a matter of, I have no idea. But it's, you know, it may not take a long time depending on what is done. Okay, Bob, I think, had another question.
I know the sound system has served us well in the past. I'm asking if you've considered improving it. We've all been in here and heard somebody with a softer voice and they tried to turn it up, but it reaches the point where you get feedback and you have to stop. There are ways to eliminate that and have that improved. So my question is, are you also looking at improving the sound system?
Yep, that was one of the objectives on the list. Yeah, that's all right. It was on the bottom of one of the lists. But yeah, the sound both for in the building and for people worshiping on live stream. So that because we know that there are things that happen at points in the sanctuary during the live stream that are just not very audible to people. So that's one of the things we're taking into account.
Hi, Kathy Forney. Leanne, I agree. I think I'm hearing you say that you would like to see the wood preserved overall. Yes. And I second that, ripping up all of it, frankly, and not replacing it with carpeting for two major reasons, being that the acoustics absolutely, and secondly, a practical matter, I'm sure you've all discussed this, moving the chairs. I mean, even if it's somebody coming in and wants to move some chairs for their family or something, some reason, it's way more difficult on carpeting. And I don't know, I think, you know, like even on the altar, possibly not having carpeting. That's my thought.
Thank you. Just so you know, I mean, when there was a question earlier, and I think, so the Sanctuary Refresh team has recognized that having a unified flooring makes more sense if the idea is to have more flexibility. So that whatever we propose as flooring, having it all be the same creates better flexibility than having, that's part of our current, it's part of where we got where we are is if we're gonna replace the carpet, do we really replace just this carpet? Because this sets us into a pattern of sitting and being in the sanctuary. And we wanna make sure that we know, we know where we're going so that we don't just do the same thing just because we're doing it, because that's what it is. Yeah. I'm gonna let Sherry ask first.
Sherry Cook. A while back, there was some discussion about the possibility of using this space for things other than worship. I'm thinking back to the first year we had brunch church in the narthex. It was a little crowded, but everybody thought it was a great experience. And we thought if we had a larger space, that would make that experience a little more enjoyable and a little easier. Okay. So was there any thought given to using the space for things other than worship?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and yes, in addition to how we have expanded the space right now, we know the Scouts use this space for award ceremonies. We know people have requested this space to maybe do recitals. People have requested this space just to meet collectively as a group and maybe do a crafting or something like that. Your thought absolutely builds into that goal we have of building lasting community. So space that gives us the flexibility to gather differently and share our time together differently was absolutely top of mind.
Or even on a Thursday that we had out in the narthex.
Yep, Sherry just mentioned Maundy Thursday when we were out in the narthex. There's benefits.
Wayne doesn't need it. You originally talked about funerals and other activities up near the front. Have you given some thought to making the front few rows different than the rest? I'm thinking cost. I'm thinking ways of, I don't know what the expense of these chairs are. These are very useful pews.
Bob, did you want to? I think I can answer that. Yes, both in terms of the numbers of seats, you'll see as well as you can, that the numbers of seats on each side is different. And again, that flexibility to be able to remove seating to create more space or shift it differently.
The pews, but maybe the first 3 rows are some option.
Oh, leave the pews and just change the first few rows. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, now it's registering. Another thank you, noting that. That absolutely was part of the progression in our discussions. We had many configurations where we left pews. We had configurations where we left some pews and did some seating. We had some where where the pews that were left were in different places. So we have looked at all of that, but we'll make note that that's something that you're suggesting. And again, it's helpful to know the why behind the question. So I heard you saying as a cost factor, that's something that we should consider.
The flexibility for the entire space wasn't one of your arguments. It was always something at the front. That's my question.
Jeff just said the flexibility in the front has always been one of the objectives, and the idea of flexibility for the whole space has never been one of the originally stated objectives, and that's correct. That is, by moving to all flexible seating, it does open up possibilities, but you're right that wasn't one of the initial objectives that we talked about. We have talked all from the beginning of the need for both a space that is conducive and worshipful for very small and intimate gatherings, which we have, and that makes space for particular celebrations of life, like funerals and things like that, and that also is like expandable for festivals, Christmas and Easter and the like. So that's, trying to take all of those different things into consideration as we build a plan has been what we've been trying to do. Wayne hasn't. Yeah, well, the people at home need to hear your voice, Wayne.
Hi, Wayne Westcott. For some reason, I seem to remember that we've had one casket in 2 years in here. And to do so, they took out one row of pews in front. I don't think it's...
We've never taken pews out in front for a funeral, and we have had more than one casket funeral in the last 2 years. Pardon?
There's a lot more room out there between the first pew and the rail than there ever was.
Nope, the pews, the seats in front are at the very front of the hardwood, and so that has not changed at all. And we have had, you are right, Wayne, that funerals are less likely to have a casket than in the past, but we have had more than one casket funeral in the last 2 years. We've had several. And whenever we have them, it is always a little bit of an orchestration of space to figure out how does the casket fit, how do people fit around it. If we have communion, the casket has to move halfway through the service in order to accommodate people. So those are just realities that we're trying to address so that for mourners at those times, there's a sense that we've planned for you. It goes back to that idea of there's a place for you here. If you are grieving, there is a place for you here. We're ready for you. Yeah.
In your considerations, you talked about having it curved. Did you ever consider putting the pews at an angle? Was that ever part of the discussion?
We have not talked about putting the pews at an angle. So that is not, yeah.
It would give you the visibility across the sanctuary.
Sure. Yep. Yep. Yes, the center aisle gets opened up if things get angled. Yeah. Good. Yeah, Jim.
Jim Berger. I'm sorry. I'm here. I love you. Do we have a hearing loop? And if we do, how do we access it? And if we don't, is there a plan to include that?
We have a hearing loop. I'm going to let Bob talk about this. Hearing loop.
Yeah, a hearing loop like in a big public space is a loop that goes all the way around the whole room, and hearing aids pick them up. Something called a T-coil. What we have is not that. I looked into it some years ago, and it was like 10 or 15 grand to put these loops in, and that's like old technology. But anyway, what we do have is things that go around your neck that do the same thing for a single person. Honestly, maybe once or twice I've seen them actually get used.
My husband tried to use one, didn't work.
And somebody tried and didn't work, probably went dead in the year it was sitting unused or something. But as I understand it, they work. I'm not even sure if my hearing aids have T-coils in them. They might. But so we kind of have that, but it's not that great.
So as a user, the technology of hearing aids has accelerated tremendously in the last 10 years and even the last 5 years. So they're all Bluetooth set up, and so if there was, like, I didn't even know that we had those things that hung around your neck. So I, in the middle of service, will grab my phone and crank up a bit, but I still don't pick up everything. And then if we were exploring something, our architect probably would be able to source Bluetooth technology for where you wouldn't have to put in a loop. Most hearing aids are Bluetooth equipped these days, if you've bought them in the last 5 years.
That's all true. There is a lot more that can be done that way, and all the sound system, audio things are pretty separate from the seating layout topic. They would not have to be done at the same time. What we have now was put in to make the spoken word intelligible to the people sitting in the room. And within the last 5 years, we start streaming, and suddenly that's an entirely different and much more complicated issue, which we haven't done, but it is sort of a kind of a separate thing. And I would expect maybe to see where we end up on the layout and things like that, get some better microphones around, make the stream better, and just make it better.
Hi, Kay Slattery. I know this all started because of the carpet issue. I'm just wondering if the narthex is going to keep carpeting, and is that carpet in good shape to stay? It's not part of the sanctuary, but it's part of the carpet.
Yeah, the question was about the narthex carpet, and it's in good condition, and it looks nice, and right now we're not anticipating changing it. Anything we do in here would need to go with it.
In terms of the carpeting, and I know nothing about carpeting, but are there does all carpet absorb sound the same? Is there choices about sound absorption with carpet? And secondly, when we have a funeral, it should never, if there's a casket, it should never look awkward. And I think sometimes it does, yeah.
Okay, the question was about carpeting, and yeah, they're different. This is a thin commercial carpet with no pad underneath it, directly on a hardwood floor, and would absorb a lot less than a thicker carpet with a pad under it. So yeah, we're looking to get advice on those things, again, just to make sure we're still where we were before acoustically. And yes, a casket has to look right.
I would press you a little bit on the hearing issue, that if we're trying to make this a space to make it community, then please include hearing impaired in your community.
Okay, Jim.
I was feeling as though you were putting that off a bit to say, let's do our
I was.
and then we'll address that. I'm saying, if your goal, one of your goals was to make this a community, a place for all, and a community feeling, then include all community in your goals.
Okay, Jim made the point he would like to prioritize making things better for people with hearing loss and hearing assist.
Look around the room here. There's a lot of gray hair, and I would guess there's a lot of hearing aids in this room.
There is, and you know, you're right. It doesn't have to wait. I may draft you to assist me in figuring out what would be best.
Ruth Kurtz, I was just wondering if we can afford this, and are we spending our money for the right thing?
The question is, can we afford this? Was that it?
And are we spending our money for the right thing?
Yeah. Well, that's a judgment that we need to make as a group. You know, I don't know what they spent when they rotated the sanctuary. I know the narthex was something over $1 million at the time. We're way, way less than that. The most we could ever imagine doing this, but yes, that's something that the congregation as a whole decides. So all I can say is there's cars you can buy that are more than we could ever spend on this, but none of those are in our parking lot. If they were, we'd grab it and sell it.
You have good questions, and I'm grateful for that. What I think we said at the beginning was that we are going to be, this is the first of 3 cottage meetings this week, so we're going to have 2 other opportunities this week. If you walk away from here today and you think, oh, I wonder about this, or I wonder about this, or I wonder about this, it's not too late. Reach out to a member of the team. If you want to have more conversation because you had thoughts and you didn't want to share them publicly, any of the members of the Sanctuary Refresh team are happy to talk with you about that. So please don't be silent. Really talk to us and let us hear what concerns that you have. The plan of the Sanctuary Refresh team is to listen carefully this week. And then to take into account all that we have heard and kind of pull together more specific proposal or proposals. We don't know yet. It'll depend a little bit about what we hear. And as we do that, then we will start to give more specifics in terms of if we were to do this, this is what we're looking at in terms of cost. If we were to do this, this is what we're looking at. So all of that has to come before the congregation because none of this can be done just because the Sanctuary Refresh team thinks it's a good idea. So it really will continue to have conversations. So I think you can expect that there will be more opportunities to hear and see as these proposals get refined over the coming weeks and months. And I think in an ideal world, for me, in an ideal world, we would have a concrete proposal as part of the annual meeting at the end of October. That's an ideal world. After 20 years as a pastor, I know not to ask the Holy Spirit to live on my time frame. Never, ever works. But I don't think it's a bad thing to aim for something. So that's my ideal time frame, is that we would be voting on a proposal at the annual meeting in October. The Holy Spirit may have other plans, as is always the case.
I just want to say thank you. Your questions really are appreciated. Your comments are appreciated. Although we are presenting this as a Sanctuary Refresh team, I think it might be also helpful for you to know we are not all of one mind. So in our meetings together, we have challenged one another, talked about what may be more important to me, may not be more important to the other person. So really, truly appreciate your questions and understanding the why behind it, or the importance of what you're bringing up. And Jim, I just want to say thank you to you as somebody who accessibility is extremely important to. Thank you for recognizing that one that we hadn't fully considered. So appreciate that.
I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you've already done.
Thank you.
Today's live stream will be available on YouTube, so if you want to go back and watch it again, you can. And by probably the end of the week or the beginning of the following week, you'll be able to see better images of the plans than we were able to show through the slides today. So I apologize for that. I didn't know how they would come across. So you'll be able to see those kind of floor plans a little bit more clearly. And as I said, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have additional questions. Thanks for your time today.